City builders have been a thing in video games for over 35 years, and today I'm going to talk about what I'm pretty sure are the best city builders of the year every year all through the 90s. Ever since the first one, which we can concretely say was the first city builder in 1989. That's a lot of games, and of course we are going to miss out some of the good ones when there were multiple good ones in a year, but I'll mention some bonus ones along the way, so make sure you watch all the way through to get all the games, and I'm sure you're gonna find something that you might not expect. Alright, beginning the city building genre in 1989 is of course SimCity. Now, there are also some games before SimCity that could be argued as being earlier city builders, but as a city building game, SimCity established the genre, and a lot of people do agree that the consensus is that this is the first city building game. Now, if you don't know the original SimCity, it was very rough because it was 1989. This is DOS days. Things changed in Windows 95, but the original SimCity has what we know and love. The RCI, residential, commercial, industrial. The graphics are dated and don't really age all that well, but they have a kind of retro charm to them these days. And it was just so important for not just the city building genre, but the simulation genre. Because Will Wright, at the time the creator of the sim genre of games, kind of redefined what a game was. It brought back up the question of what is a game and what is a toy. Because traditionally, a game is a game because there's a win and lose condition. Whereas Will Wright, the games he was making, didn't really have a strict win or loss condition in many cases. They were often these sandbox simulations. So there was this argument like, is SimCity even a video game or is it just a digital toy? I think over the years it has settled on SimCity being a game because although there might not always be a strict win condition for SimCity, there are implied win conditions, like maybe reaching a certain population or self-defined win conditions, and that's what makes it a game. SimCity is of course an obvious answer here for the first city builder in 1989 and the start of the genre. Moving forward, things might be a little bit more unexpected. Going to the year 1990, Moonbase. Moonbase is probably the second ever city building game, and you might know this game as being called Lunar Command because it was re-released back in the early 90s. Video games often had re-releases under different titles, but they were actually the same game, or they have the same title, but it's actually a different game. That happened a lot. Things were not so structured in the 90s, particularly the early 90s. Well, Moonbase released in 1990, and it posited that we would be living on the moon, and you do build residential structures and facilities, and you can see how Moonbase inspired many games that came after it. I have recently played some Moonbase for the first time ever, and it is not great. There's no music, there's no soundtrack. The few sound effects that are in there are harsh and grating, and the gameplay itself is vague and bizarre, and at the time it was probably quite interesting, but Moonbase itself was not really a solid game. Even at the time, it wasn't getting the best of reviews. But its later release, Lunar Command, which released in 1993, which we could consider an updated version of Moonbase, was considered much better. So if you do want to go back and play this game, probably get the Lunar Command version rather than the original Moonbase version because it's rough. But anyway, this was the second ever city builder in my books, and it's an interesting one historically speaking. And then we get to the third city builder ever in 1991, called Utopia: The Creation of a Nation. Now this one I have recently played as well, and it kinda holds up. This one has some really interesting ideas, and it's a strategy video game where you are building up your city on this alien planet, but there's also RTS mechanics. And this is before Dune 2. Which was the first ever RTS. Utopia, the creation of a nation, besides building up your city on an alien planet, you are also harvesting resources, you are researching technologies, you are producing military units like tanks and then controlling them with markers to send them to actual locations to defend against invasions. So this is actually playing more like an RTS in some regards, but it's an RTS in the way where you are mainly defending your city. So maybe it's not a full-on RTS, but the formations of early RTS mechanics were clearly there. So when Dune 2 came along as the, quote, first RTS, like proper RTS as we know it, we could of course say earlier games like Herzog Zwei and blah, blah, blah. We've been into that in the RTS list videos. The idea of RTS mechanics of controlling military units was already there, and we can see that in Utopia, the creation of a nation. And there were advisors, and the graphics are kind of still good and interesting and charming on various different worlds and planets and tile sets. This one actually has a lot to it. So if you don't know Utopia, the creation of a nation, it's worth looking back at it, if only to see where things came from. I mean, you can see how this one inspired other games moving forward as well. The game Outpost looks a lot like this, and we'll be talking about that in a little bit. This one surprised me. Going back to the early 90s, you don't find a lot of great games that still hold up today, but this one kinda does. And then we go to 1992, and the best city builder is Caesar. For a long time, I just guessed that Caesar was maybe the second ever city builder, but obviously it wasn't. Caesar, although the later games had this whole walker mechanic and puzzle simulation systems and gameplay mechanics that really changed up how Impressions made games, the original Caesar, which I have played, plays a lot more like the original SimCity. You are even trying to raise property value, and that's how you evolve houses, by providing services and getting resources to the housing areas. You raise land value, and that's what evolves it. But the original Caesar, it doesn't play so great today, but it's an interesting historical look back, and if you haven't played it, it's probably still worth it. It is available on GOG, which, by the way, if you want to get a game off of GOG, any game, please do use the referral link down below. You just click that link, and then it just takes you to the GOG store. You can then buy any game on GOG, and it helps support the channel. Thank you so much. But the original Caesar, it's really important as a thing that existed and then led to so much more after it. It's probably not so great to play today. You can try it, but really the sequels are just better in every regard. But it's interesting to see where it came from. And a Rome city builder, this is the first one. And even though we've had a drought of them for a long time, they're coming back today. This is where Roman city building really took off. Moving on to 1993, one of my favorite city builders, SimCity 2000. The first city building sequel, as far as I know, because it's the follow-up to SimCity and really changed up the game. Now, if you played SimCity 2000, the main question is, which one? There are like 15 different versions of SimCity 2000, maybe more, but there were so many different types of SimCity 2000. There's the CD version, there's the DOS version, there's Network Edition, there's the Nintendo version, there's the console version. There's so many different types of SimCity 2000, and quite often they were just called SimCity 2000. It's kind of when people say, oh, Civilization 2 was on the consoles as well. They had a console release of Civ 2. But Civ 2 on consoles and Civ 2 on PC are basically two different games entirely. They just had the same name. It's not like today where you get a console port. No, you just built an entirely new game and you slapped the same name on it, I guess, and that's how they did things. So SimCity 2000, it's just a fantastic game. And if you didn't know, there is a new Windows installer for SimCity 2000. So if you want to play SimCity 2000, today's actually the best day to do it. because it's just fantastic. And I had a full-on playthrough of SimCity 2000, which I did over on Patreon, thanks to patron support. Let's Plays don't work so well on YouTube these days, but I really wanted to play through the new updated SimCity 2000. So if you want to check that out, thank you so much. There's also some free bonus videos on Patreon if you want to check those out as well. But if you do sign up on Patreon, there's some playthroughs going on over there. SimCity 2000 already finished, and there's a Sims one going on as well. But SimCity 2000, it holds up very, very well. It plays great. It looks great, and once you get into HD widescreen with the new installer, it's just fantastic. SimCity 2000 is such a nostalgic, classic experience, and it's the kind of game where it's from an early time of gaming, but it really, really holds up. It plays like a good indie game today, even though back then it would have been a AAA game, but it plays like a really good indie game today, and I still love SimCity 2000 because it was the first SimCity I played. It's got all the classics that you'd want: RCI, the stats, the power, the infrastructure, neighbors to compete with, and building up to arcologies. It's just really nice. Going on to 1994, and the best city builder to release that year was Outpost. So earlier I mentioned Utopia, the creation of a nation. Outpost looks like that. Now, I did play Outpost back in the day, and it is a game where you determine your starting resources and stats and all of that, and you go out into space to try and find a new planet to inhabit. And you actually pick which planet you want to land on, and then you land on the planet and you start building infrastructure and housing, and you have the surface level and the underground level, and you have to research technologies, and you have to try and survive. This feels like the first ever survival city builder. So today we have survival city builders galore. But before this, city building and surviving in city building tended to be more of an economic thing. Despite some disasters in Moonbase and SimCity, you could get these disasters that happened. Whereas Outpost, people could starve. And that kind of makes it, in my books, the first, if not one of the first, probably the first, ever survival city builder. Though I suppose it could be argued that Moonbase was the first survival city builder because that also had some food mechanics as well. But I don't know, in Outpost it really does feel like you are surviving, isolated on this alien, desolate planet. Now, an interesting fun fact about Outpost is that the manual was printed long before the game actually released, so there's actually just a lot of mistakes in the manual. If you actually read the manual, you can read what the game was supposed to be, but it describes entire mechanics that simply don't exist in the game, because that's how things were back then. There were no updates, people didn't have internet, or at least most people didn't have internet to get updates. Even if there was an update, you'd have to go to the website and manually download a patch. Games just wouldn't auto-update back then. So when a game launched, that's what it was. That's why games like Moonbase had to have a re-release with Lunar Command and that kind of approach. So Outpost released, and it didn't have everything that it was promising in the manual, which made it a confusing experience for many, but it kinda holds up, and it has these nice 3D cinematic intro sequences, a very long intro. It plays the Mars soundtrack, which is a classical song, which fits it very well, actually. You get to the planet, and you're surviving against the environments, and then another rival/cooperative colony shows up and also builds on the planet, and you're researching tech and building up, and it's all really interesting. It's a bit janky today, but it's still a fun one if you can figure out how the game actually works. And it's got one of my favorite things, which is layered building, layered maps. So the surface level and then the underground level, and you build them in tandem and they line up. I always really like that in games, and it's not seen all too often. For a pivotal year, 1995, and the best city builder of that year is Caesar 2. So Caesar 2 is a vast improvement over Caesar. If you go back and play Caesar 2, a lot of things do hold up. If you're familiar with the later Impressions games, this one still doesn't quite play like those. It plays more like SimCity plus Total War. So Caesar 2, you are building up your city and placing services and infrastructure and raising land value to evolve your houses. But there's also the world map where you're building resource infrastructure and highways on the world map, and then sending out your soldiers to conquer villages and locations and engaging with armies on the world map. And then when you engage an army and have a battle, it zooms into like a little mini battlefield and you fight with your soldiers. There's so much here that was lost in the later games that Season 2 actually kind of worth going back and playing, and it's also available on GOG as well, so you can just buy it and play it if you want today. It does get kind of repetitive because, you know, video games back then, the idea was that you just got 1 or 2 games a year and then that's what you played for the entire year. So you didn't really have to keep things fresh all that much because there weren't that many options. You just get the game and all right, I'm playing this for the next 6 months, you know? So Season 2, it can get a little bit repetitive very quickly. Like I kind of got everything that it was offering by like 4 missions in of a 10 mission campaign because every mission feels about the same. It is still looking kind of nice and it plays nice, and the ideas that they wanted to implement are fun and interesting. So Season 2, the second ever Roman city builder maybe, but it was a vast improvement over Season 1 and an interesting one to jump back into, at least for a little bit. Going to 1996, and there's still remnants of DOS, but Windows 95 has been established, and the best city builder of 96 is Afterlife. Now, I didn't play Afterlife back in the day, but a lot of people do recommend it, and it's available on GOG. Afterlife is a city building game where you are building heaven and hell, and it's a weird one because it just looks so bizarre. If you've never played it and you look at it, it's just something completely different. And you might be interested to know that this game is made by Lucasfilm and Disney. So there's kind of a Disney aesthetic, and Lucas back then was doing Monkey Island and those sorts of things. It's just such a visual cacophony. It's a cool idea of building the afterlife, and like you're building a city, but you're also building these dual worlds. And in 90s fashion, there's this weird sense of humor and tongue-in-cheek comedy as you lay down roads and guide the dearly departed to where they're meant to go. So this one, I don't have a lot of personal experience with, and I do plan to jump in and really figure out how Afterlife all plays out. But as far as I can tell, it is the best city builder of 1996, and a lot of people still hype it up, and it's available to get right now. So this is one that a lot of people reminisce about, and I think it's something that is uniquely, intensely 90s. Okay, 1997 is next, and it was a great year for RTS, but not so much for city building. We don't really have any proper city builders that released in 1997. The closest I could find was Constructor, nowadays just called Constructor Classic. And this might not even really be classified as a city builder. It's just the closest thing I could find to a city builder. It's another thing that is uniquely 90s in the way that it did 3D pre-rendering. It's got that grim, kind of depressing look to it, but also bizarre, grotesque aesthetic, which was very popular. And the idea of this game is that you are constructing a town where you are acquiring land and building things up by any means necessary, managing your resources and workforce with an iron fist. And it's a mission-based game where you are just acquiring things and building things so that you can own and control everything. I would argue that this is not really a city building game or a city builder particularly, just because you are... I mean, it's a weird thing to say. Just because you are building a city doesn't mean it's a city building game. Genres are not literal. You know, when you say rock music, it's got nothing to do with geology. Genre labels have certain mechanics attached to them. And here's a good chance for me to talk about what makes a city building game. Overall, I can boil it down to 4 main points. 1, you place houses as wholes, like you place entire houses. 2, you have a population that lives in those houses that you have placed. So it's not like Age of Empires where you place a house, but then like no one actually lives in that house. It just increases your pop cap. 3, 30 population is considered small. So this is to distinguish confusing city builders and base builders / colony sims. 30 population is small for a city builder, but could be quite sizable for a colony sim. And 4, the main camera has to be from above and somewhat far away. It has to be a little bit of a distance, so not a first-person builder. That would be a base builder, kind of like Medieval Dynasty. That's not a city builder, that's a first-person survival game. And city building has to have this. And a general rule, colony sims place beds, city builders place houses. There are exceptions to all these rules, but that's the general consensus of what defines a city builder and colony sim. And Constructor Classic, I would lean into not being a city builder, but it is the best and closest thing for 1997. Coming from a void year for city builders to a great one, 1998 brought us Caesar 3, and it's undeniably the best city builder of 1998. Caesar 3, I don't know how much I should talk about this. I have extensive experience with Caesar 3. It is now being modded in an open source new engine. The vanilla transition is called Julius, but a whole new modded version is continuing in development with new buildings, new monuments, new mechanics, everything, and that's called Augustus. There's a whole new campaign, the Reconquered campaign, and you can play Caesar 3 for 20 years and still find new things, new mechanics. Now, some people don't like the puzzle aspect to it because the creator came up with this walker system where you don't just have radius effects of buildings, they actually spawn a walker and they go along a road and then they walk randomly, and if you don't know how that works, things just don't function as you want it to. But if you want to know how Caesar 3 really came into being, I actually had an interview with the creator of Caesar 3. I'll link that down below as well. And you can hear me ask all the hard questions of why Caesar 3 is the way it is. But it still looks great, it still plays great, and it's still in development thanks to the community. Caesar 3, one of the best city builders of all time now, and one of the most nostalgic city builders. For a Roman city builder, it's just got pretty much everything you want. You got missions, you've got some cool voice acting, it looks great. It's fun, it follows you to various historical locations, and although the first game in this Impression series of the new era in the late 90s, this one does miss some mechanics. It's got some good RTS mechanics as well. It's just missing some things which have now been added by Augustus, most notably monument construction, which came along later, but we now have it for Caesar 3. So this one holds up even if you played the original, but it's the best time to jump in right now. And you could play the game twice now. Once through Julius, playing the more vanilla experience, and then you can treat Augustus and the new Reconquered campaign as a new game plus, and play through Caesar 3 a whole other time. It's just a completely different experience in the same game, and I can highly recommend it. As a bonus mention, Anno 1602, the first Anno game, did release this year in 1998 as well, but I'm gonna say Caesar 3 ranks above that one. Coming to the end of the millennium with 1999, and we got the sequel to Caesar 3, Pharaoh, plus Cleopatra, that came up a bit later, but Pharaoh released, the Egyptian city builder from Impressions games. And Pharaoh is often considered the best of the series without any mods. So Caesar 3 has Augustus, so that's now arguably the best. But Pharaoh was just really good from the get-go. There's some balance issues, and of course there's some bugs that remain to this day. But Pharaoh plus Cleopatra has a ton of content. It's Egyptian historical building, there's giant monument constructions, you can build the massive pyramids to small mastabas, you can build the Sphinx. It looks good, it plays good, has one of the best soundtracks ever made, and it's just fantastic. The religion mechanic, the RTS mechanics, there's naval combat. There's just so much good here. As long as you like the walker system and the sort of puzzle mechanics of city building, then it really works out. And Pharaoh plus Cleopatra is just one of the best city builders ever made. It's hard to rank exactly which one is the best, but this one is up there. For the city building genre, this was a great way to close the millennium, and also as a side note, this one did get a remake more recently called Pharaoh: A New Era, which some people prefer but some people don't prefer, so this one still serves a lot of purpose as a game today and worth playing as long as you can get over some of the more dated aspects and a few hiccups the game still has. And as a bonus mention to wrap up the millennium, there is SimCity 3000, which released in 1999 as well. But versus Pharaoh, I struggled with which one should rank higher, and considering how most people either go to SimCity 4 or SimCity 2000 these days, and with the significance of Pharaoh, I figured Pharaoh ranked higher. But SimCity 3000, also a great one to wrap up the decade. And there you have it. 35 plus years of the best city builder of the year every year. The best city building games since 1989, SimCity. I know there are many games that I have not mentioned. Please do let me know which ones you think I should have mentioned or which you think would actually be considered better than the ones that I listed. Keep in mind I'm limited to the format for this particular list of the best of the year every year, so I tried to mention bonus ones as I went through. But let me know if you have any disagreements or other ideas of how you would have listed things. I'm very interested to hear your thoughts. Anyway, that's going to be it for now. If you enjoyed this, please do consider subscribing or following on Blue Sky, or maybe you could check out extra stuff on Patreon. But if anything, if you want to buy any of these games on GOG, do use the referral link down below as well. And because I'm a YouTuber, hit that bell, I guess. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this and found it interesting and or useful, and I'll see you in the next video.